Hello everyone and welcome back to Age Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age Sigmar, and in this video it's going to be why play Beasts of Chaos. And joining me in this video, I'm delighted to say we have got Doug here from 2 Plus Tough. How you doing, mate?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me on again.
You're very welcome. So it'll be great in this video if you guys have seen my other why plays. Essentially what we do in this video, and essentially the point of it, we go over the positives and negatives of this army and help you decide if it's an army you want to do. You know, if you're kind of on the fence of it, we'll spend the next hour or however long this video goes on trying to push you over the edge. If you've already got the models, we'll give you hopefully a bit more motivation. But alternatively, by the end of the video, you may find out that it's not an army for you, and then you may want to do another project instead. So that's all the point of this video, really. This will probably be on my Beast of Chaos, be towards the start of it on my playlist. However, for my sake in order of recording, this is towards the end of my Beast of Chaos review in the last video, and I think this will put up to 9-10 hours by the end of it, and I can say I have had my fill with Beast of Chaos at that point. But it's been an absolute blast. If you really do enjoy Beast of Chaos, please check out that playlist. But also there'll be a link to Doug's 2 Plus Tough playlist down in the description below, because you've done a few lore videos and stuff, haven't you?
Yeah, they're a super cool army.
Fantastic. Because I've done like basically one lore video, and then most of it is gameplay stuff and everything. But if you really want to dive into the lore, please go check that out. Okay, so now that we've got all the pre-ramble aside and we've just mentioned lore, let us talk about who are the Beasts of Chaos. Doug, would you like to take a lead on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Beasts of Chaos are probably one of the more unique factions in AOS. They are the first Chaos faction. And there's a lot of mystery surrounding kind of their origins, because in the Age of Myth, before the Chaos gods really entered into the realms, the Beasts of Chaos were already there. They are Chaos Undivided. They don't worship any god. They don't need, the Eye of Corn to come and open up a portal to hell or whatever. They just kind of exist. And so one of the things that I love about this battle tome is in their lore, instead of having like a dramatic backstory, like say Nurgle has for what the Garden of Nurgle is, that kind of stuff, theirs is actually a few theories. Like, it's literally scholars within the universe writing their, what we would call like a doctorate or thesis paper about what they think these things are. And there are a few theories, but one of them that I love is that they are basically like the yin to yang. So like, if order exists in this universe, there also has to be chaos, like to balance everything out.
I remember that.
But not like in the evil chaos god sort of way, but more like in just a natural balance. And so they represent that. These are the things that live in the woods that people are scared of. And so they really represent that through all different kinds of beasts and monsters and that kind of stuff. And there's different origin stories, of course, like I said before, and you can choose whichever one you like and lean into it. But essentially, they are the unending hordes that remind you that it's dangerous out in the woods or in the plains or deserts,
it's
wherever.
Like Brother Grimm's, isn't it? Sort of fairy tales.
Exactly, yeah. Like they would probably be a really good source of cautionary tales for the denizens of the
you can
mortal realms.
Imagine, like, oh, don't leave the, a mother saying to a child, don't leave the hut after, dark, otherwise the beast will come from the forest and claim. There's loads of different avenues, and like you're saying, all these ideas essentially are where the Beast of Chaos came from. Like, you can pick which one you like, or to be honest, make up your own if you really want to go with that sort of idea behind your army. And something that I really enjoyed with the Beast of Chaos Battle Tome review, and it's probably the most research I did for a lore video, if I'm honest, because I didn't really know much about the Beast of Chaos, and I read the Battle Tome inside out and then tried to put it in my words. And what I found really interesting about the book, and I was completely taken by surprise, it was almost a history of the mortal realms. Of, we've got the Age of Myth, but what happened before that? What happened in the like the prehistory, like primitive stage in the mortal realms? This really gives you the idea, and it makes you realise that sounds like Sigmar was the first to come here and everything, but this book talks a lot about how the Beasts of Chaos were the first, and how they really sort of run the block because no one could really stand up against them. And Stormcast were the invaders. Well,
Yeah, so
Sigmar
essentially, you brought up Sigmar. I'm just gonna hop off that. Just like, so the prehistory is that, like, they were like very primitive tribes of elves, humans, dwarves. Sigmar comes in and it's like, we're gonna build a society out of this. And so he leads crusades to go purge the woods and that kind of stuff of the beasts, and keeps pushing them back, pushes them back until they are. People think that they're gone, they're extinct, but really they're just like in the wastes where no one else is living, kind of a thing. And then when the Age of Chaos begins, that's when they pop back up and they're like, "Oh, we're here too."
Yeah,
and
we've always been
yeah, exactly. And that's where we see them as an army really kind of come out.
And I love it how. So I was just going to say, I love it how they look at, when we think of Chaos and Warhammer, or at least when I do, I typically the first 4 things that pop in my head are each of the Chaos gods. But with these guys, they really are chaos, not Chaos Undivided, but just chaos in its purest form. They shun their kin who go to worship a certain god because they don't see that as dedicating yourself to the overall of chaos, do they? They sort of see, like, if someone dedicated themselves to Khorne, it's like, why do you only dedicate yourself to the blood, shed and slaughter aspect of chaos? Why are you neglecting all the other parts?
Yeah, it's a very obviously, primal is going to be a word you see a lot in the battle tome. Take a shot every time and you'll be dead within 3 pages. But it's might makes right. You don't want to bow to another god because that shows weakness. You never bow to anybody else, kind of a thing. If you're in charge, you should be in charge, kind of a deal. So that's definitely a cool thing. They do have the ability, though, to dedicate themselves, which is awesome. Yep. And there's ways of becoming a Beast of Chaos, like you get mutated, and there's just a whole bunch of, like, it's a very, I'll say it's like a narrative toolbox. There's very few armies that are as open-ended as these guys for you to do whatever you want. They don't bow. So I guess you touched on a really interesting point of, like, they're not Chaos Undivided in the typical sense, where most of what we think of when we think Chaos Undivided would be like Slaves to Darkness.
Yep.
Right, where they have, they don't align themselves to any particular god, but they all follow Archaon. But like in Beasts of Chaos, they don't have a big central personality, whether they're a god or a leader like Archaon. They just are. And I don't know, there's something cool about that. Of just, you can make your own epic backstory for your Beast Lord and that kind of stuff, and kind of go forward from there.
Yeah, and then if you look at sort of the grander schemes of things in the war-torn realms, how do they sort of play their part, on the side of chaos? And really, they're the guys why you have a front line against chaos, but they're the reasons why you need to build fortifications behind you as well, because they will get you. They will ambush supply wagons, all these little things means that you can't, like, undefend yourself from the rear. Really, you have to be watching your 6 as well. And
that's a good point.
Although exactly, and although they may not seem as legions upon legions of the forces of Khorne and everything else, they can just be as a pain in the arse to order, if not maybe a little bit more.
I was just about to say they're kind of like the vermin, like the pest that's out of control. And I was like, well, that's kind of what Skaven is themed to be, but Skaven are much more intelligent than Beasts of Chaos.
They have, like, order, don't they, as well, kind of?
They do, yeah. They have some kind of societal construction, whereas these guys, they are truly the vermin in the sense of they just kind of get everywhere, and they just ruin things, and if you're not actively trying to prevent them like you would, like, a kitchen cleans to get rid of bugs, if you're not trying to do preventative things, they will be there just mucking stuff up.
Yeah, and it's I remember one bit in the battle, so I'm sure you remember it as well, where it doesn't matter who they're attacking. If they're fighting order, they will sort of, an order pushes the Beasts of Chaos back into the forests to fight them another day. The Beasts of Chaos have, they've tainted the land, a farmer's crop, like, imagine like a pumpkin or something like that. When a farmer goes to collect it at a harvest, it may have mutated itself and starts eating the poor farmer, or against death, they carve. I remember this. They were saying they carve, like, ruins into death fortresses, so they start
Yes.
crumbling ever faster. The brutal clans of the Yorick War clans, as an example, the Ogre tribes, their beasts become bigger. You know, the ones these, I don't know, if you imagine a herd grazing animal like whatever a cow is in the Mortal Realms, which I'm sure there is one because a giant carries one. Maybe there is evidence here, but that is, they say that's something what the Yorick War clans hunt, and then next time they go to hunt it, the thing's grown about 4 times its size, and now hunter has became threat. All these little aspects that really I think what the battle tome does as well in the lore. I know we've been talking about lore for a while now, but it really helps add in extra fluff and extra lore to how all the other societies work in. It's basically saying these are the beasts of chaos, this is how they are a problem to this race, that race, and that race.
I was just going to say they express the, maybe not like they're not viewed as like the ultimate arch enemy like Archeon is, but they're constantly a threat, like to progress and that kind of thing. And that is its own kind of danger, which is cool. They're different,
which is good. But so if you guys like to know anything more about lore, because we can talk about that for hours, check out mine and Doug's playlist for that. And if you have any more questions after that, I will be surprised, but feel free to leave them in any of the comments for the videos. So with that, we sort of start going into strengths and weaknesses. So you may typically be thinking, if you haven't seen a Y play before, you may be thinking just strengths and weaknesses in the game, but we do also mention them, what they're like off the table as well, so more a collecting side of things and a hobby side. So what would you say, Doug, is a...
so I will... Go ahead.
So I was going to say, what would you say is, on a hobby side of things, off the table, what is a strength for doing Beasts of Chaos? What is an appeal to them?
Yeah, so they're kind of like if you ever play 40k, like with Tyranids, where individually the models may not be fantastic. A lot of the sculpts are a little bit older. But when you see a fully painted army on the table, like collectively they look amazing. Like they just look like a swarm of guys. Hobby-wise, there are some really cool conversions. If you do go down the route of like a dedicated god, there's a lot of cool things you can do for conversion purposes. More hobby stuff. They're very easy to paint now that contrast paints are out. If you prime them Wraithbone and you just attack it with a flesh color of your choice and the different kinds of furs between skin colors and browns, you can reasonably paint an entire army in like 3 weeks. I mean, you can just crank it. What else?
Which is a huge plus, and I'd say, what you're saying about converting for the gods and stuff as well. Is I have one of my local gaming buddies who's on Tinder. Is called not Tinder. Sorry, that's completely wrong. It's on Insta. I don't know why that was in my head. It's on Insta. It may be on. I had no idea. Anyway, try to get out of this one because this is live recording, so I cannot edit any of this. Anyway,
it's all good.
He's on Instagram as, I don't want to say his name now, but anyway, so he's basically done loads of conversions for Beasts of Chaos, and he has done it to the bits where it will say in the battle tome where, like, some Beasts of Chaos, live in the clouds. So he's made Minotaurs, but he's made them to look like eagles and all that. Or there's some that in the sea, cool. So he's given Bulgors the heads of sharks from the Deep King kit, and he's made lion ones from a white lion. Like he read a paragraph, and you can really go crazy because also it says in the lore as well, and I know we just talked about that, but it says, like, the ones from the realm of fire, like their manes and their hair may be like made out of ash or maybe on flame themselves, and for the ones from the realm of shadow, they may all have like an aura of like smoke around them, especially like the ones from the Dark Walkers or something who are very tactic ambushy and stuff to surround them.
For sure. And what's great is that the models, there's a lot of open space. Like, a lot of them are just like open bare chested, whether it's Ungor or Bagor or whatever like that. I read lots of different kinds of units, but so it's a canvas. You can do all the cool modeling in different colors. You could do tattoos. There's just a lot of different ways you can go. They are as flexible in the actual model as they are in the lore in terms of doing whatever you want.
Yeah, there's loads you can do with them, and there's I've even seen someone made a Sigor out of a Scar brand model and everything, which turns into expensive conversions and stuff, but like you really can, if you if one of your things is like not that a cycle is made out of resin anyway, but you don't like so much resin stuff, you, as some of the Beasts of Chaos can be, you can do those conversions. And there's it's always proxies and stuff you can do as well, which is quite cool. And I'd say as well is when we start moving into sort of gameplay, collecting the army itself, if you really want to go, right, I really want to make this army mainly about Thunderscorn, mainly about Dragon Ogres. Again, we'll get to like competitiveness. However, you can build an army around different aspects of the range. I think there's there's a battalion for no matter what
everything.
sort of there's one for like Dragon Ogres, one for like Minotaurs, there's one for your standard Bray Herd, there's I think probably the only one that's missing is like a Zeech one, but we don't need Zeech. There's too many Zeech Beastmen out there, I think.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we will. Is there anything else you want to say for them off the table?
No, I think that's it hobby-wise. Just that the models, the kits are not strikingly new. They were the same ones from Warhammer Fantasy Battles, but because of just the range of options you have for modeling and painting, I think in that realm specifically, if you want to do something fun, they really do hold up. And that's all I'd say for that, off the table.
Yeah, fair enough.
So strengths on the table?
Yeah, so
okay.
Strengths on the table. So how do they feel to play?
So they are extremely good at playing the objectives. So if you are playing match play or narrative things, one thing that you have to keep in mind is that your arm is not super killy. Like, they don't do a lot of damage. They can, but on the whole, most of the units don't. In terms of like having rend and stuff like that. But you are exceptional at mobility and bringing things off the table. One of their mechanics is they have a summoning mechanic that's very, very tame. It's not, super crazy like the Slanesh one, or kind of complicated like the Khorne one, where you're accruing points that you can spend for this or summoning. Nothing like that. But you can bring troops reasonably off the side of the table, and pretty consistently, so you can threaten objectives very, very easily. So we were just talking about the lore where, you always got to watch your 6. Absolutely. I took these to a local event, went 2-1, just because, if you're playing against like a Stormcast player, for example, when they arc down from the sky and they're on the table, they don't move fast. But my guys, I have done 24-inch movements and then charged. You can hyper speed this army to oblivion, and I think that's kind of an important thing, is that they're extremely good at that win condition.
I think on that point as well, they're quite a good army to learn how to play through objectives.
Yep, and model placement in terms of how many guys do you have around this objective, you're wholly within bubbles. Fantastic army in that respect, yeah. Yeah,
and I think also, like you say, like where you've got to watch your 6 and everything, and when you played against those Stormcasts, you can have it so the enemy has to keep something very powerful on their territory because they don't have many units, because you've got 10 Ungors in ambush to come on turn 2. Like,
exactly.
You can. I remember to be fair, it wasn't against Beast of Chaos, but it was against Stormcast, but they had some Vanguard Hunters so they could come on the board edge. So the same the same premise. And I only had 2 models left on the board, which was Nagash and a Vampire Zombie Dragon, and the Vampire Zombie Dragon just sat there and wasted 440 points. Just so 5 Vanguard Hunters or these 10 Ungors couldn't take the objective.
For sure, yeah. And for a lot of, I pick on Stormcast because I see a lot of it. I mean, that's for reasons, because they're GW army. But 5 Liberators, they're awesome for holding an objective because they don't die very easily, but they also don't kill very much. They don't have the best weapon profile. So if I put 10 Ungor within so many inches of that objective, it doesn't matter. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter how bad the Ungor are. I still have more dudes than you. And that's absolutely a strength.
Yeah, it's almost you can imagine the Ungors sticking their tongue out, can't you, at the Liberators? So it doesn't really matter. You guys are all demigod beings, and we're goat people. We claim the objective.
Yeah, and Actually, I'm gonna save that for the negatives. I just thought of something, but
No worries.
as far as the other positives go, it's probably one of the most flexible armies in the game in terms of they have these battalions that let you gain a mark of a god, so you can make a Khorne Beast of Chaos, and it works in the Khorne faction, and so they're not allies; they are Khorne models. And they make really good blood type points.
Yes, they do.
There's not a lot of ways in Khorne to like, run and charge or anything like that, or get a lot of movement bonuses. So what they really do add to a lot of these chaos armies is speed. You're not leaning too heavy into any sort of play style. So like if I take them in Nurgle, I'm still going to play like a Nurgle player in terms of the rest of my army is very tough and, consider an objective and keep it. But the Beasts of Chaos add that level of speed and just bodies to just throw at the enemy to let them chew up. So in terms of flexibility, you can be, Beasts of Chaos, any one of the 4 Chaos gods. They can be taken as allies in Slaves to Darkness, I believe.
Yeah,
I haven't
they're
looked
the
at the
two
last.
that can. Slaves Darkness and Beasts of Chaos are the ones that can join up.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's just there's a lot of cool things there.
Yeah, there's loads to it. I'd also say it's an army where, if you're quite new, you'll probably hear a lot of people say it's a horde army, so you take lots of things. But like we said, you can paint with contrast. You can paint them up in not too long.
Yep.
So that would have been a problem, but now that's not really a problem.
Yeah,
And
yeah. You can crank it out.
And
pretty fast.
It's an army where, so there's one of the things what people say, and it is true to a point, that a lot of the army can be like chaff, can be sort of, you can say, oh, you just throw these at the enemy, or you use these as a bubble wrap, and you get to the whole list of the army at the bottom. You go, is there anything else that can't be used as a bubble wrap? But what you can do is, when I was reading I think it's called Tuskor Chariot.
Yes.
Is it Tuskor? I mean, like, I've never played one, but I absolutely love that thing. It can re-roll its charge. It moves pretty good, and yeah, it's not the best thing in combat and everything, but you could tag a big block of enemy on the side, and yeah, they may kill it, not this turn, but the next turn, that unit you've just tied up may have cost the enemy like 400 odd points or something, and you've just lost, and you've wasted 2 or 1 turn off the enemy out of the whole game.
Yeah, I would liken them to, they're probably the closest thing to a death army that Chaos has, in terms of, when you usually think of death, you think of like necromancers controlling these legions of just throwaway guys, because who cares about the skeletons? Like, that is the same mentality that you have to have here, where it's like, this is an army where you're much more about board control in terms of threat ranges and tying down enemy units and playing objectives than it is about like just run forward and smash. But they are extremely good at that game in terms of board control.
Yeah, they are. You can. I can't remember the points now, but I was looking at if you wanted 30 gauls, for example, in in one unit, you get a bit. I think you get like 10 points of a discount or something for the legion, but that is 32mm bases.
Yep.
Just under an inch apart. That you can.
Yep.
And when I was doing a list building in the last video, I literally gave an example of like, just have 30 of those stretched out in front of 2 units of vesticles, and that's like and you can have them so they're like, I don't know, 4 inches in front of your precious units. If the enemy doesn't have any flying or anything, you've just created a huge buffer.
Yep.
Where they may kill the young gauls, but then you're, bit more glass cannon unit. Well, they're on glass cannons anyway, but more glass cannon units like your ball gauls or something, after the gauls have died, could then charge in. It's one of those armies that I think when you read the war scrolls, at first you can feel maybe a bit underwhelmed or something, the army
exactly.
But then when you feel like you read, oh no, I take this unit because it's meant to die, so then it doesn't matter that this unit I have is very attacky, but it doesn't matter how bad its save is, because it won't be attacked first, because the sacrificial unit has already died at that point, so then it can charge. There's
For sure.
So I just sort of want to get that out of the way because I know like Beasts of Chaos, a lot of people say very bad things about them, and there's not going to hide away from it. Not the most competitive army out there, but they are an army that can still win their games. Of course, if someone gives the example of 3 Keepers of Secrets or 4 Keepers, they are going to struggle.
Yeah.
But against most normal armies, they can have a go, and if you do win that game, it shows that really you've put a lot of strategy into it, which I think is you are rewarded for it.
Yeah, no, and if you are looking to win a major event, this is probably not the best army. However, like I don't go to events. You know what I mean? Like I rarely do. I've been to one. I mostly did my gaming through either friends or local one-day tourneys, and they have always done really well because they pose a really unique challenge, in terms for your opponent. So you're not going to win every game with any army, but I think that they are a very fun one. If you like that kind of board control thing, they can give you a lot of enjoyment. So that's, again, there's just different levels of play, and so if you want to be a national tournament winner, it's going to be a little rough. If you want to just have fun locally, they're a blast. They really are a blast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in the habit of when I pick an army, I'm thinking how can I make this? I mean, I don't win any tournaments, but how can I make this so I win more games at a tournament than lose, essentially?
Yeah, that's my goal too. Yeah, 2-1 is my thing. I'm just like, yeah,
exactly. And I spend quite a lot of time thinking about that, and then I think at most, before the situation with the world at the moment, I would go to 1 or 2 tournaments a year on a good year, and then all the other friendly games in between, I'm not thinking about when I'm looking at doing an art. I'm just thinking about the 5 games in 6 months from now, which really is not the way to think of it. You should be thinking about, Oh
yeah, no, I get you.
4% of your time of playing games is in a very competitive setting, or something, So it's not a problem, and it's one of those. And if you do take the army and you do struggle with it, I'd say don't give up straight away. I'd say it's a case of just you have, like we're saying, sort of model placement is very important in this army.
Yep.
And it's just something you're going to have to learn as it goes on. I know we sort of mix the strengths and weaknesses in a sort of one, but I think I kind of feel like it had to be done this way for this army. Yeah,
I mean, what I will say, so transitioning into, we'll just do a hard line. You're right, because there's a lot of things with this army where there has a really big plus side, but it comes with a downside, and so they do blend together. As far as downsides go, so we can transition there. As far as downsides off the table, it's a lot of dudes. It's a lot of dudes. Like, no matter how you build the army, you can build them a very elite. You can do like a Minotaur heavy war herd style thing. I think the best save in the faction is like a 4-up, like for your heroes, if I'm not mistaken. I think 5 and 6s are the norm. Guys die in droves, or they take a lot of wounds in droves if they're multi-wound. So one of the things is, so I owned Beast of Chaos for quite a while. I took them to a few events, had a great time. For me personally, with my life in terms of like how I'm able to game, I need something that I can like pack and unpack really quickly. And I just spent all my time unpacking these guys like a dingus. I had them in foam. If you have this army, it's much easier and quicker if you magnetize them. But so it's a lot of dudes. You're going to spend a lot of time pulling bodies off the table. So if that's not your jam, that's fine, but that's the reality.
At least it's not like Death, though, where you can't put the models in the case. You have to keep them all out just in case they come back.
Yes.
Which sounds great, but really, by the end of the game, your opponent has slowly packed away all their models, and now you have 120 skeletons to slowly put away.
And everyone else is going to get a drink, and you're like, I'll just be here for the next hour, I guess.
This is fine. Yeah, exactly. No, Beast of Chaos, when your guys die, they're dead. They're not coming back.
No, well, yeah. There's a little bit like summoning and that kind of stuff, but the vast majority of them are not coming back. If you end the game with half your army on the table, knowing how many units we're talking about, how many individual models we're talking about, you've had a seriously good time rolling 5s and 6s for your saves. Like, The games that I won, I loved them, but I ended with maybe 25 guys on the table of the like 90 that I brought. It's just nuts. Beyond that, I think the only downside off the table is just transportation. You know, they can be really annoying to transport if you're somebody who wants to keep them, you know, in a good condition. Do you have any negatives off the table to add? Because I have like a couple for on the table.
Yeah, I think with just what you're saying, like packing, unpacking, maybe storage as well. But I suppose they're quite. You know, when you're saying you have to be careful. One or two spears or weapons, I imagine, will break at some point.
Oh, instantly. Yep.
But as it's not order, I mean, if he's got a club with you know the head of a hammer on the end of it or whatever it is, or a spiky ball, I mean, he's happy to hit the enemy with just the club.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, when I was playing mine, I treated the gore models like a barrel of monkeys. I would just put them in a big pot or something like that and just dump it on the table. As far as other negatives, you know, they don't have a lot of punch. They're going to struggle in low point games because they will evaporate faster than you can bring them on to get those objective plays like we talked about before. What else? Yeah, I think that's the biggest one. That's about it. I would say there's some internal balance problems with the books. Like there's a bunch of units that all kind of do the same thing, but there's one that's just way better at it, and that happens at a few different levels.
There's like, for example, I mentioned it earlier. Dragon Ogres, they're a unit I really like. The same as Bull Cores, because they.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you like something that's half ogre and half dragon? Like, you know, it's just why wouldn't you like it? But and then you look at them and you just think like, when I was reviewing them, I was just like, I just don't see why you, unless you really like the lore of them, why you would take these guys. Like the way I had to come down is like compare them to a Bulgor, and they have a 4-up save instead of a 5-up, so they're better at holding an objective. And I had to kind of leave it at that because if you look further into this, there's so many other units that are better than holding objectives and Dragon Ogres. I was like, only one of their weapon profile has 2 damage. Why? And then you have, and then like I think later on I compare them to what are they called? Enlightened, Zangor Enlightened on discs. And I'm just like, it's just. I know the different point cost, but it's like there's no comparison.
Yep. Yeah. And so that I think internal balance is a problem you see with the book. And then, but that
can be said for a lot of books.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, you know, I mean, KO was in that, Carriage and Overlords was in that state for quite a while where it's like the guns on the dudes is just so much better than the guns on the ships. And then they, you know, they tinkered it with a new book and they're doing much better now.
Exactly. So,
you know, it'll change, but just kind of keep that in mind. And I think that's all I have for the negatives. There's a lot of positives, but
there's I think like something I would say if I don't know, like I say, if the world was in its current state, if you were regularly going to your gaming store, you'd probably have to order quite a few of the stuff online. But I think most of us are buying our stuff online at the moment anyway. Depending on where you are in this world.
Yeah. So it's a sad fact, but
it's not really too much of a issue right now. I would say like I know we mentioned like some of the models are a bit old and like that looks a bit too old to put in my army, but for me how I personally look at it, it's like challenge accepted. I will do a conversion. I am looking forward to doing this. So it depends who you are. If you're not really into the hobby side of things and you like the idea of you're buying a box of models, you just want them to look the part and be happy with it, then maybe it's a problem, but depends where you come from.
That's, you know, it's another one of those like two sides of a coin thing where it's like a lot of the sculpts are online only from GW Direct. A lot of them are resin, or not a lot, a couple are resin. Like the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, he's the leader of the Dragon Ogre guys. He's resin. He still holds up. He looks great, but you know, if you don't like it, that's a problem. And that's the negative side, but the other side of that coin is this is an army that is like begging for conversions and proxies and all this kinds of cool stuff. So it's, you know, again, it's one of those situations where it's just like you just have to be the right person to enjoy that.
Yeah.
If you do, it's the greatest bonus ever. If you don't, it's the suckiest suck ever.
Yeah, exactly. It depends what you're after, and
Hmm.
I honestly don't know when they'll get new models. I mean, I don't know if it's gonna. They got a Warcry. Well, no Warcry. They got a Shadespire, not Shadespire. What's it called? Warhammer Underworld.
Underworlds.
They got a warband in that. They look pretty cool.
Yes.
If they were to remake models, that would be a really cool. Because they had like Ungor Raiders and dynamic poses and stuff, and that was pretty cool.
Yep. And I will say that I will shout out that warband specifically is really good. Like, he has a spell that gives you a flat +1 to hit. Well, in an army that's buckets of attacks that don't, they're very basic profiles, like 4 up or something like that. That changes the math on that many attacks wildly. And so I really do recommend him.
And he was. So I wasn't going to review the warband because I just assumed it was like most of the warbands that don't really translate well into Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, a lot of them don't. There's only a few that you're like, oh.
I think it's like that. There's the Nighthaunt one, the Pariah Queen that can half enemy. But a subscriber, apologies, can't remember the name, said, do take a look at it. It's quite good. I looked at it and said, yep, okay, that's a good spell. If you get the spell off, that's great. Like, it's a really...
So his spell is awesome, and the fact that his warband can tank wounds for him makes him one of the weirdly most survivable units in your faction. And so, I mean, like, I was playing Magakin, and I allied him in before Blight Kings got FAQ'd that you only do the exploding hits on an unmodified 6. It used to be a 6-up, and so people would put negative, buffs on you and eliminate that. He is a little tick in the other direction, so he helped out quite a bit.
I can imagine, yeah. And I think with that, just quickly talking about allies a little bit.
Go for it.
If you want to make your Beast of Chaos, if you look at it and you go like how are they meant to compete with some of the other stuff out there, Be'lakor is a good ally because he can just do that once per game thing where he makes an enemy unit just for 1 or potentially 2 turns. If the enemy gets a double turn, just not do anything unless they roll 5 up. I had that against my Nagash, and I didn't do anything with my Nagash in that game.
Yeah, exactly.
He got charged with 5 Chaos Knights and died, and I was like, wow. But anyway, so you can say that's quite good. The one I talked about in the list video I did recently is a Demon Prince from Slaves to Darkness, because where your army is so squishy with very bad saves, a Demon Prince you can charge into combat because unless it goes against something with a similar ability, it's always attacking first. So you can, charge your unit of Bulgors in with your Demon Prince, and you can go, right, Demon Prince attacking first, don't worry about that, and then I'm attacking with the Bulgors.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They, on the allies note, like if you are a Chaos player, and you're like someone like me who I kind of like to dabble around with different armies, I kind of settled on Nurgle for the most part, but I still have that pull to be like, what if I had a Khorne army? You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
I know exactly.
These guys are fantastic because they are either allies with everybody, or you can take the battalion to actually bring them into your faction. So if you are collecting multiple Chaos armies, they're a great little filler. You can, I can get some Beasts of Chaos to ally in with my Nurgle, and then once I get enough stuff on the ally side, well, I can either then run Beasts of Chaos, or I can just run Khorne. Just buy that Battle Tome, so I have the Allegiance abilities, run all the Beasts of Chaos stuff I already own, and have a Khorne army. And you can do that for all of them.
Exactly. And what I'd say is those. So, in case anyone's wondering like how we do it, in case we didn't cover it earlier, essentially you put these guys in a battalion. There's a battalion for each god, and as soon as they're in that battalion, they get the keyword of that god. Then they can go in the arc. It's as simple as that. And these battalions, they're not like, I don't know, 1 Doom Ball and 2 units of Bulgors. You can really, if you want to force it, you can make full armies out of this. You can make, I don't know if it would be the best thing to do, but you can probably make 2,000 points of Beast of Chaos and most of those. Gods.
What is it? It's the Slanesh, the Tzeentch, and the Khorne ones in particular are ones that I point people to where, like, if you already are interested in those armies and you're like, I want some other options, Beasts of Chaos are phenomenal. Like, just build the minimum battalion and then kind of expand from there based on what you like or don't like. But I think that those are both fantastic. And there is, as a small point, the FAQ is what makes them work for that faction. So they gain like the Khorne keyword, but it's in the FAQ where the battalion itself becomes a Khorne battalion, so they're no longer considered allies. So that's how you can do it all.
And it's and it just shows that you have this army, and similar to when we talked about Maki and Nurgle, actually, with so many things you could put in the army. Well, this army you can put it into so many different armies. So you can have 5 allegiances, I imagine.
Let's see. When the book dropped, you used to have the 4 Chaos Gods,
and then you got
Grand Alliance Chaos, Beasts of Chaos. That's up to 6.
Yeah, I suppose. Yep, Grand Alliance.
And I feel like there was something else, but I don't remember right now. So yeah.
But and then it's just thinking like within that, then you have all the sub allegiances if they're applicable for every.
Yep.
So if you like, I don't want to keep bringing up the competitive side again, but just to clarify, if you really want to do this army, but you're worried that you've heard lots of people say it's not good at winning, take in a different allegiance.
Yeah. Exactly.
Boom.
Yeah, because that's kind of the only I would say faulty thing about tournament results that you'll see, and other people have brought this up, people who are far better at competitive play than I am, of just, okay, if I say Khorne is doing really well this year, well, Khorne's a keyword, right? Like, it doesn't denote the fact that it could be a Beast of Chaos with that battalion. You're playing with the Khorne allegiance abilities. So there's a little bit. So when people say like, oh, Beast of Chaos has a low win rate, it doesn't mean that the units in Beasts of Chaos as a battle tome are bad. It just means that people are struggling with Beasts of Chaos allegiance.
Yep.
Because if you take that same army and you jam it into any other Chaos Gods thing, they get immediately better. Like, from the competitive notion, I like Beasts of Chaos as base, but if we're talking like strictly competitive stuff, it would show up as Khorne or Tzeentch or something like that. So it doesn't mean that the book's bad by any stretch.
Exactly, and I think it's can be a joy to explore these sort of things, because also if you can find something that works in the army, chances are you're not going to. It's not a net list or something you've stolen online or what everyone else is running. You're doing your own thing, and if you find it, then that's a bit of pride you can have yourself for the army, I think.
Yeah. And did you want to talk about competitive stuff? Because there are actually ways to be competitive with this faction. Like,
absolutely. You got some ideas?
Oh, yeah. So there is a gentleman in Australia, Joel McGrath, who I'll give him a shout out. He is a lover of all things Slaanesh and Beasts of Chaos, I believe. So I interviewed him. It was like 2 years ago now, so my brain's blanking. But he did win an Australian event with Beasts of Chaos, and he focused, like we were talking about, on objective play, which, in matched play, all of the objectives and that kind of stuff are symmetrical. So you and your opponent have the exact same goals. Mm-hmm. And so, it's all about, and that in his specific instance, it's 100% about taking floods of dudes, pinning down your opponent, and kind of playing that board control game. There was also, in that same week that I interviewed him, a gentleman in the UK who won some Masters event.
Oh, nice.
And he kind of went the total opposite direction, which is super cool in that we mentioned before as a con that there's a lot of internal balance problems where it's like, a lot of these units do the same job, but this one does it way better, kind of a thing. Well, he just maxed out all the stuff that's the best choices. And if that you want to be competitive, that's what you do. And he came up with a very aggressive Zangor-based army using the Beast of Chaos rules. Because, we can chat about this, the Tzeentch branch of this, because they brought in Zangors, is incredible. Because the spell lore in Beasts of Chaos proper, like the allegiance abilities you get, like spell lore, they're just a balls to the wall good. Some of them are, and so giving a Zangor shaman access to those spells and all the Zangor stuff that just works, it doesn't need the Tzeentch keyword, or I guess that's Tzeentch allegiance abilities to be good. Zangor shaman just buffs Zangors, right? By having him near him and that kind of thing. So all of those synergies just carry over and now you have this cool spell lore and ways of summoning new guys and all kinds of cool stuff. Actually, when I did that 2-in-1 event that I went to, I was running the Zangor Battalion. It made my army a 1-drop, so I outpaced everybody. Turn 1, run forward a bunch of Bestigors, pin the opponent in their deployment, and then the rest of the list is me with Skyfires and Enlightened on Disc, who are kind of like the melee hammer and ranged hammer of the unit, on objectives, pulverizing. That's exactly how it played out. It's what I wanted, and it's what it did. And so I went 2-1. It's awesome.
That's decent, yeah.
So you can be super dastardly. So, for example, like the Tzeentch Battalion is the bonus that they get is any unit in the battalion can unbind like a wizard. Well, that's awesome. Like it's, I don't know if you're going up against a super magic heavy army, but I have more unbinds than you do attempts.
Yeah,
like just flat. Like
I think a great
just for
example.
showing up.
Yeah, I mean, like I think I mentioned this when I reviewed it, and I think the best example I could think of for that battalion is if you go against a Flesh Eater Court army where they're not great at casting magic, but their spells are great. So if you can stop their spells getting off.
Magakin's the same way. Yeah, fantastic spells. Never see them.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the exact reason why.
which especially if it's like, I don't know, unbound by a unit of 5 Centaurs, like something that means nothing. And
it's so depressing. That's so sad.
It's like that unit can die now. It's done its job. It doesn't matter.
Yep. Yeah, and even you'd be surprised. Like I took it the game that I lost. It was against a Legions of Nagash player, and he took Nagash. And I wasn't losing. I actually unbound a number of Nagash's spells because, because the guy would roll a 5, and Nagash would give him +3.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, 8. We can do that, right? Like, it's not. He's not all rolling double. Sometimes he rolls like garbage, but because of the bonuses, it'll technically go off. But I have a fairly good chance of unbinding it. So there's a lot of cool things there. I would say, do we want to move into, is there anything on competitive stuff that you wanted to ask about? I mean, like those are kind of the two ways is, Tzeentch heavy can be extremely good and provide a lot of challenges to an opponent. Whereas the other way is just flood the board and control it.
I think it's nice for an army that can struggle competitively. I think it's nice that there's 2 ways to do it. There's not just you have to do this. That's the only way. There's nice. So there's 2 options here, which is cool. And to be honest, I think that's it for competitiveness. I think that's covered quite well.
As far as do you want to move into like how to start collecting? If any of this sounds interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure people would be happy to hear that.
Yeah, so they actually have one of the best start collecting boxes out there, in my opinion. You get a Great Bray Shaman, which, like I said, I really do believe they have one of the best spell lores in the game. I love it. Their base spell is cool because basically you target an enemy unit and it makes them come towards you, so you can pull people off objectives, or at least pull them closer so that you can fit guys within 6 inches behind them, kind of a thing, without engaging them.
And it's like on the lore side, it turns their mind like very primitive or something, isn't it? It makes them very beefy.
Yeah, it's like a de-evolution or devolve or something like that. It makes them go crazy. And they act like Ungor who can't control themselves, which is kind of cool.
And sorry, I just want to quickly say, because it reminded me, I think this is one of the best armies out there that show that how it is in the lore, it really represents that on the table. And so
I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. Absolutely.
Especially if you when you read the abilities, if you read the top little blurb before the ability on each war scroll that tells you a little bit about the lore, which they've been doing since I think 2nd edition, which I love, you really do get so much character out of this. And the great, you might have just been about to say it, but the Great Bray Shaman, he's I can't remember his called, but his generic ability that just gives Bray units being the +3 to movement.
Yep. That's great. So if you start the movement phase within 3 inches of him, you get +3 inches to move. Of course, he's always within 3 inches of himself, so he's a fast little wizard dude.
Yeah, he's got strong legs.
Yep, and then you factor in things like the Bestigor are the other unit that comes in the start collecting box, and so if you deck them out with the horn and the banner, just for those two units being next to each other at the start of the movement phase, you get Bestigor who can move 9. If they run, they get an extra 1 because the banner lets them get an extra movement +1 to their run and charge, I believe. And I think it's the horn that lets them run and charge.
Yeah, it's the Bray Horn.
I might have that backwards, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So you get this unit that's just a missile. You can just for starting, you just I'm going to shoot these guys that way. Got a unit of Ungor. They're going to shoot this way and tie someone down because they all have the same horn and banner abilities, that kind of thing. So, yeah, no, that combination, giving you that unit specifically, was a win, like a huge win. So the Shaman's awesome. Okay.
So I was just going to say, like, when you say they're so fast, I've been caught out before where saw a unit of Bestigor on one side of the board and didn't realize to get to the other side of the board in one turn. Like, they will really surprise you.
Yeah, so that's actually... So I owned the My Beast of Chaos before my Maggotkin, and that's when I learned of, like, the real strength of pinning your opponent in the deployment zone. And the Beast of Chaos, I think, do that better than anyone because they are a large unit that can turn 1 charge. You can build the army in ways where you are guaranteed to get first one. You can be a 1-drop army. And then because the unit is so big, like you said, 32 base, models, 32 mil base models, even if they can fly, you can deny them any room to actually land coming towards you. So it's very reasonable. Like, they're just awesome.
Definitely.
Sorry, I got turned around here. So in that box,
you say,
get
like, pin the enemy in their deployment as well, because a lot of time, like, if I can see the enemy can charge me turn 1 and they can take the turn they want, I sort of will set up very defensively, thinking that the enemy wants to cause loads of damage to me when they pin me. You're not really too bothered about causing loads of damage to the opponent. You just want to stick in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool.
Yep. Yeah, I see your shield wall, and I'm gonna charge you, but I'm just gonna put like 1 Ungor to tow in there, and that way you have to then waste your pile and move.
Yep.
Moving guys who are way too far away to attack forward, and that is another means of survivability for me. Like, it's just...
If they're saying like a Stormcast army, let's say, and they're movement 5, and they've had to all move 3 inches this way, but they really later in game want to go over here, that's that's almost like a whole turn.
A lot.
Yeah, of movement.
So yeah, that's pretty sweet. So anyway, I'm sorry, I got deviated there. So you get a Shaman.
I do it all the time, don't worry.
Bestigor. I think you get 10 Ungor as well.
You get 10 Ungor. Can you make raiders out of them?
Do what?
Can you make the raiders out of... You can make 10, yeah. I'm just looking at the website now, and the guy's holding a bow, so you can make the...
Yep. There's a lot of cool things about them all. Like, the Bestigor are the best of the gore because they have rent, They have
a good save as well.
4 up, yep.
4 up, yeah.
They're heavily armored. They have rend, 2 attacks each. They are, generally speaking, going to be your kind of like hammer unit kind of a thing. Like, he's going to bring the fire.
They're good against units of 10 or more. I think they get rerolls something like rerolls of 1s to hit, and then if they're against order, then it's +1 attack. Something like that.
Yes. Actually, I can pull it up here. I have the allegiance abilities all pulled up, but I'll move down to the...
They're very anti-horde order unit. That's how I think I've labelled them.
Yep. There's so many battalions. So, yeah, there's those guys. The Ungor are interesting because they are incredible as Ungor, because that's the cheapest possible unit in the book. So if you just want loads of bodies to do exactly what we were just talking about, Ungor are the way to go. If you're like, if you're playing competitively mid-maxing, I used Gors when I was playing the army because I got a whole bunch of them in a trade, and I was like, oh, these will die just as well. So I used them. But if you want to do like a competitive thing or something like that, or, because you get a bunch of them in the start collecting box, it's a good place to start.
Yeah, and you always want, at least 10 of these guys because they look great on the bonfire to get those summoning points.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they're great for sacrificing. Any way that you want to sacrifice something for whatever reason. So they're awesome. And then the only oddly enough, the weakest part of the Star Collecting box is the Sigor / Gorgon
Yep.
unit, the big monster inside. I think it's great to have because those are the kind of models that like new people get excited about, and that is a point of value, to get people pumped. In the game, not too great. The Gorgon, I think, is the better choice for building it out. Because he has rend and he can get in there and he can mix it up, multi-damage attacks.
I'll tell you.
So what I would say. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'll let you finish.
Oh, I was just gonna say, build a Gorgon and then use everything else to kind of bubble wrap him a little bit so he can do some cool stuff. But he's still awesome.
Yeah, I'd say the Gorgon. So when I reviewed all this stuff, I think I like the Gorgon. He's cool. Like I say, he's one of the models you see that draws your attention towards the range.
Yep.
And then on the table, he can do damage. He just don't let the enemy attack him first, because he will go down like the Titanic very quickly. You have to. He can do a lot of damage, but he has to attack first. He has to. So he's quite hard to multi-charge.
Yes. Yeah, he is. That's a great.
Yeah,
great way to say it.
If you charge like 3 things in and he's like your second or third choice, he's probably going to get quite beaten depending on what he's fighting by then. Now the Sigor, I know people have said that it has no use whatsoever in anything. I have one scenario where it can be, if not useful, adequate. So the idea is, and I don't know how many times I've had to stress this point and how many times people don't agree with me, but if you take this guy and we put him in Darkwalkers, so he can set up behind the enemy, and then what is really important here is the enemy has wizards, and they're very weak wizards as well. This is very important. The enemy has to have a 6-up save wizard. So then he comes behind him, and then he can probably successfully throw his rock at that enemy wizard to try and flatten him. And even if the enemy wizards are a bit tougher and he doesn't kill them outright, that's still I think 140 point monster that the enemy is going to have to send something that's probably a bit more expensive to kill it. Otherwise it will eventually just start weakening these guys down. But
exactly,
if you take him and deploy him on the board and not teleport him behind your enemy in Darkwalker, there's no reason behind this guy. But like I can if you know your enemy's quite reliant on magic, you can take him to a lot of things in Beast of Chaos. You can take him just to annoy your enemy, annoy him into killing him, and not something else that's important.
Yeah, it's one of the ways I think to look at units in this codex, because codex battle tome, because you can look at them like you said before on paper and be like, that's kind of terrible, you know what I mean, compared to anything else. Is that because their point cost is always universally very, very cheap. The way to look at something is rather than just sheer power or attacks or damage is does this prompt my opponent, does it force them to have to deal with something, and a creature that size, knowing that the opponent can't summon something within 9 inches, like Deep Strike or whatever your rules are for summoning anything within 9 inches of an opponent. That matters because now you're just putting a huge black spot on where they can deploy sometimes if they have to deal with something. And because everything's so cheap, your opportunity cost for that is very, very low. And so, exactly. Yeah, if you can put a Sigor like directly behind them, who cares? Like, it's so cheap to you. For 180 points or 40 points, whatever he is, like, who cares? Yeah, why not? You deal with him. I don't care.
And it's like if, like in Dark Horse, for example, when you have some Bulgors to come onto the battlefield, but let's say they're coming in on turn 2, your enemy is like, well, I've got to kind of deal with this annoying Sigor, but also he's got like 6 Bulgors coming on at some point. I have to deal with that as well. And really, like, the idea behind that Sigor theory I have is it's just another spanner you're throwing in your opponent's work. It might not be. I'm not saying the Sigor is worth taking for 140 points to do that, but I'm just at least it's a job for him.
Exactly, like, and that's a lot of the army is it's not going to do anything but it forces your opponent to have to deal with one more thing.
Yeah, that's...
And because it's so cheap, you can reasonably field a lot of those really annoying things.
Yeah. That's why, like I was saying, like when we were talking about the Gorgon, like it's not always a bad thing to put in the list, because if you've got like a spare, I think it's like 160 or 180 points. If you've got happen to have that kind of spare towards the end of your list building, if you put him on the board, he is something the enemy has to deal with, because he will do a lot of damage. He's just that extra quick. You haven't got enough money for a Chimera or something. He's just that extra quick, you know, threat that the enemy's going to have to deal with.
Totally. And there is, I've kind of touched on this before when I was talking about Skaven with a friend of mine, where it's like, there is a psychological effect to this huge thing, right? Your opponent, they are standing and looking at a table where they see a bunch of little guys, but then there's this huge thing that's directly in front of them, where it creates a false sense of urgency, and you can use that. Like that's a thing. You're not, you know, being sneaky and like, you know, hiding information, but you're putting things in place that distract and pull away at your opponent their ability to like control the board, and that's a strength, you know.
Especially when you're making this guy, put him on a massive rock as well. Try and really make him look imposing.
yeah, exactly. The rest of your army's bronze and skin color. Make him highlighter green, like he's a construction worker.
As well, what I happen to do with my like conversions, like I don't know, like a corpse cart, for example, I made quite a imposing one of those, just because I had a tournament the next day. The corpse cart I ordered on the internet hadn't arrived, and I had to go through my bits box to make it. And people saw it, and I told them it was a corpse cart, but a lot of time they don't know what a corpse cart is, and they've like get into combat with it, and then they go, "Oh, I don't really. I have a few things to attack with, and I don't really want to leave the corpse cart." And I say like, it's basically two zombies attacking you. Really? Yeah. And it's just like you're not deceiving anyone, but it's like if you make something look more imposing, then like say point. You know, make it a Hulk, and it's a lot more scary.
It's exactly. Yeah, it's about as scary as a bus stop, where you're just like, it doesn't do anything, it just stays there. People stand around it sometimes, but you don't know that.
Exactly.
What I would say is, if you want to start this army, like we were just talking about the start collecting box units, it's a fantastic set. You can always, if you get multiples, because I think you're still saving a bit of coin by grabbing this just for the Bestigor, Ungor, and Shaman. It's at least about the start of collecting box price. Just throw the Gorgon if you have a bunch of them. Throw it up on eBay, get a couple bucks back.
Yeah.
For a direction on where to start, I've pointed people towards the Desolating Beast Herd Battalion, because I like having battalions to point people towards, and then. You know, you did I'm sure, a very in-depth review on that battalion.
Yeah,
during all your coverage
as well, because it's just something. I think we've already mentioned this, but just to say, like, a strength in case we didn't. The Beasts of Chaos have some of the best battalions I've seen in Age of Sigmar, and it's not saying the most tournament-winning battalions, but just most battle tomes I open up, I read the battalions, I'm just like, they're just almost a waste of paper. You know, at one point they were too strong, and then they sort of weakened them down a little bit. But Beasts of Chaos, most of them are all viable. Like
yeah, they really are. They're where they take the things that are in the book, make them in a very flavorful way, like in terms of their composition or makeup or ways that you'd want to run an army, and give them rules that make sense, or like they help X factor in an army, you know, to kind of lean into. So like that one is, if you're in your opponent's territory, every time you roll a hit of 6 to hit, it becomes 2 attacks. Now, what's interesting is that it doesn't say melee. So if one of the things that I was talking about, Joel McGrath, who floods the board to do lots of board control, that's part of what he takes. And so he will use a lot of the Ungor Raiders, because now they're not good at hitting, but for every 6, you know, if you roll a bucket of them, you're going to get a lot of extra hits, you know, and they're better at wounding than they are at hitting and that kind of stuff. So it's quite interesting. And then, you know, one of the things I can't stress enough about this army is there is not a defensive bone in this thing's body. Like, aggression is everything. Like, you need to be like up your opponent's nose as fast as possible. And so
it's one of those things, isn't it? The best defense is a good
Oh yeah.
Orphans, is
Yeah,
it?
exactly. Yeah,
This army?
exactly. Why would I hold up a shield if I can just hold my buddy's dead body in front of me instead?
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. Makes perfect sense. So, getting rewarded for being aggressive is just a win. Being in your opponent's deployment zone, or their territory, I should say. You were going to be there anyway, so you might as well get a bonus for it.
Yeah, and I think I mean, obviously everyone's different, but when I go to play a game of Warhammer, I mean, obviously tactics and why you make decisions in your game is because it's to help you win the game and be
Yep.
most competitive focused you can be. But everyone likes the idea of having something that does damage. Like everyone likes.
Yep.
It's like, for example, one of my friends called Jamie. He had a Stormcast army for a while, and it was very good. It was back in the day when it was the Liberators with a 2-up save you rolling ones, and it worked pretty much every time unless you took mortal wounds against it, the shield wall. But he did he got to a point and he said it's just for him it's just not fun. You just roll in save.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like rolling for your attacks is great, and if you can get explode in 6s, and get extra wounds off, that's great. And to be fair, like when you said with the Ungors, that's probably a much better way of looking at it. But when I was talking about it, I was like, if you take loads of Bulgors and give them the Grey Axes, it turns to that's a huge difference. That's great.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, and that's, but again, like we were talking about before, it's different ways of using the exact same thing, and that's awesome. That there are so many units in this book that you can lean in different directions depending on the models you like, and there's something for them. I like that quite a bit. It speaks to me, like, if you look at the Beasts of Chaos box or their art or something like that, and you're like, that looks cool. They play exactly the way that they look like they would. Mm-hmm. And if you're someone who's just like, I don't care about tactics. I do not think about this game tactically at all. I like painting, I like modeling, and hanging out with friends. I'm going to put my crap on the board and run forward. Well, that's good. That's all they do. That's literally all they do. And all the rules are about speed and what you do when you get there. Like that's it. There's nothing else to this book, except for different ways to do that exact same thing, which is awesome. So, yeah,
it's cool. What I was going to say, is there anything else? I've got some subscriber questions to get to in a minute. I don't know if you've got anything else you'd like to say about
wax poetically about them. Not truly. They work. I just kind of re-upping the fact that they're an aggressive army and they have a lot of variety. So if you do have a collection of them, you'll never get bored, because if you just run them as Slaanesh and you have Slaanesh abilities and that kind of stuff, all the different ways that you can play them give you a completely different outlook on how to use them. You can field a bajillion tiny little heroes and rack up depravity points and all this kind. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, there's loads of things you can do. Also, if I imagine someone may ask, who's from Warhammer Fantasy or something, and they know that the Beastmen got split up. Had they been put back together? Do they work? If I want to take different parts of this army, do they synergize well? I would say they do compared to some other armies. They work well together. They do different jobs. But the Bray Herd units, their synergy is mainly within the Bray Herd keyword. But it's like you say, it's when you take them in a joint battalion and they all share the same bonus from that battalion. And the Desolating Beast Herd is a good one because that kind of unites the Bray Herd and the War Herd together. Yeah.
Yep.
And the battalions as well, they're really generous. I think that's quite a generous one, isn't it? It's like you can make it fairly small, the battalion, and then you could make it quite big.
Yeah, I mean, at minimum, you need what? 2, 3. Honestly, very few units, because you need 2 things of Ungor, 1 thing of Gore or Chariots, 1 thing of Bestigor, and a Shaman and a Beast Lord. I mean, and that sounds like I'm listing a lot, but they're not a lot of dudes. I mean, in terms
It's not
of
a lot of points.
no, yeah, it's very minimal because all those things are dirt cheap. So yeah, you can absolutely go super tiny with those.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah,
So with that, we'll go to some questions. If that's all right.
yeah, yeah.
I'll just
Fire when ready.
I'll quickly get them up again. Just go to the channel. I think there's about 5 or something, so it shouldn't be too long. And hopefully they're not too demanding. But let's see what we have. So this is something that we've just talked about similarly. So I think we should start with this one.
Okay.
This one's from Red. So he says, I just picked up the Start Collecting box, Herdstone, and the Battle Tome. What should I pick up next for my Beasts of Chaos?
All right, what do you think?
So
You're the one who did all the tactics videos.
I know I do all the tactics videos. I think, like we've talked about, I'd look at the battalions and look at something you want to head towards. I would say you want to start either, if you want to go different units from Start Collector Box, that's fine. Or if you want to stick with like Bestigors and Ungors, you want to start expanding those unit sizes. Those particular units are not minimum size units, shall we say. They are the things that are going to be quite horde focused. So I would say you want to start working on that, but also not neglect the heroes as well. You want to later on, like one Great Ray Shaman won't be enough. I'd say it's quite good to have one or two of those.
Yeah, I think 2 is a good minimum.
And it really depends what you want to do. If you want to go with the elite Bestigors, like I said, build them up, but you can also put Gors in for a nice sort of middleman between the Ungors and the Besties, or you can add in some Warherd units. It's really up to you. It's always funny when you get asked these sort of questions where it's like, what should I go? Because really, do what you want. If you're asking like, I don't really want to make a mistake in buying something I'm not really going to use, don't buy Dragon Ogres. That's one of the biggest.
Yeah, that's a solid.
Yeah, it's probably one of the biggest things I could say. You got anything you'd like to say to that?
Yeah, I guess my suggestion would be buy a second Start Collecting box. If you don't want the big Gorgon, just throw them on eBay for cheap. Get a few bucks back. What I mean by that is just fill up what you already own to make it effective. So I would suggest a second Shaman. I would suggest at least 10 more Bestigor. They're fine in units of 10. Like they're probably the one unit that is pretty good in just its standard bog size, because they have the rend and you can have multiple units that all threaten and that kind of stuff. So they're fine. But the Ungor, you're gonna want to beef those numbers up, just because you need them to die, but they have to stay alive long enough to protect the things that shouldn't die.
Yes.
So I would say buying a second Start Collecting box is not a bad way to go. And then from there, I would say probably switch to individual kits. I agree 100% with you that pick a battalion, because they do have some of the most flavorful and still really, really helpful battalions. Just picking one and building towards it. It's the way to win. And I don't mean like win games. I mean like, make sure that you don't make any bad purchases or anything like that. So
I'd also say like something like myself. If a new arm is coming out and you want to do it, so you buy like the standard thing, the battle tome, the scenery, the Start Collector, and you naturally may think the spells as well, the endless spells. I would say Beasts of Chaos, unless you have a strategy around, I wouldn't say they're essential, the endless spells. Like, don't feel like you have to purchase those. As like, I'm buying the scenery, I might as well buy the spells as well.
Yeah, the only one that is good, and it is really good, is the Bull. But that's, honestly, you won't get value out of the Bull until you have a really firm understanding of board control and those kinds of things. So don't worry about that.
I was just going to say that there's enough to learn with the army as it is with the movement and everything, like I said, board control. You don't need to throw another spanner in the works. Like
I agree.
even I would forget half the stuff. Like, and you really want to sort of build your experience in the army a bit slowly. So hopefully that's helped. And if you have any other questions, just again put it in the comments of this video. So and then Oliver has asked, saying, should I use allies, and if so, what unit? And he also says, what god is best to play, and why is it always Nurgle? So I think we have quite a Nurgle fan here. So I'd say quickly with Nurgle, when your things die, good things happen in that battalion.
Exactly, yes.
Mortal wounds
Yes.
happen, and your things will be dying in this army.
Yep.
Definitely. I think like if you take like loads of minimum sized units or something and run them at the enemy, you could do some more wounds with that. But and with allies, we briefly talked about that. I said Better Core and Slaves of Darkness, Demon Prince is good. Was there anything that, because they can ally with Slaves of Darkness, so we're talking about allies allying into a Beast of Chaos army and not putting Beast of Chaos into another army?
Yeah.
I think because the reasons why I said the Demon Prince is because the example I gave was a Khorne one, because it was the Khorne battalion, but just Khorne for thematically. If you make him Khorne, his command ability doesn't buff Slaves of Darkness units, etc. It makes the ground all slippy, and enemy units within a certain range of him half like running charge rolls. So that's like, so it's, you're not really missing out on that. But the main reason for him was you've got a hero in your army now with a 3-up save.
Totally.
And he's always fighting first.
Yeah, I would say if you're looking at allies, I think the whole point of allies is just to fill in weaknesses that the army doesn't have, or that they're lacking. What I would say, what Beast of Chaos is lacking is either lots of rend or multi-damage attacks.
Yep.
So, our allies good? Sure, yeah, absolutely. Just look for things that are, you don't need somebody who's fast. You have everything is fast. Yeah. Like, you don't need somebody who is cheap, because you have a lot of cheap bodies. Pick something that fills in what's missing. As far as which god battalion, thematically, my favorite's Nurgle, of course, because I'm the Nurgle guy.
Yeah.
I've heard that Khorne is exceptionally good too. There's a battle report channel my friends have, rerolling ones, where right now they're doing like a campaign. It's a narrative campaign, but they still use match play rules to give you a sense of what it's like. And he's using the Khorne battalion and the Warherd stuff with Khorne rules, because they get all kinds of cool bonuses. Awesome. They're really cool. Really makes them shine.
If you really want to make your stuff even more killy, just
and if you are someone who is like, friendship is optional to you, you live in a void, you can just go all in on the Tzeentch stuff and kick people when they're down, and it's awesome too. But a very different kind of awesome.
Yeah, it's, and my favorite Chaos God is Slanesh, but I really wanted to recommend that battalion, but in all honesty, I can't, because the whole battalion works if you're in range of an enemy hero with an artifact of power, and you just can't guarantee it.
Yep.
The best case, you can say that he might have one, and it might be on his big thing he wants to send forward, but it may just be on a wizard in the back.
Yep.
He's like, not going to add to anything. So it's all based around that. So it's hard to recommend. I'd say when I reviewed them, the Khorne was, I think, overall the best, because the ability is you have to be wholly within 9 inches of another unit from that battalion. Mm-hmm. So wholly within 9 sounds quite small, but if you put a Beast Lord in a middle of a block of Bestigors, as an example, they will always be within that 9 inches, basically 18-inch circle. Yep. It's not too small. But yeah, that's it really. Just whoever's your favourite god, and clearly it's Nurgle. And then Oliver's actually got another question. He says, and everyone always says that with the Beast of Chaos, it's always about field control. So what is field control? So ball control, and do we both agree with that? I think we've talked about that quite a bit, haven't we? Where model placement is essentially, because you can have so many cheap bodies on the table, they can cover such a big area of space, and then that's denying your enemy from teleporting in, or maybe even flying over because your block's so big, or just it's preventing your enemy from doing movement placements. And
Yeah. Oh, it's that, and then the one thing that Beasts of Chaos excel at is it's not only that you have models, because you have to remember you can't deep strike or whatever your army's equivalent is within 9 inches, but also you can't finish a movement that's not a charge within 3.
Yeah.
And so, so if you're looking at the board, just imagine, do your little NFL, whatever sport you guys play, or wherever you live, like where they do the little like superimposed art or whatever like that. Just imagine a little 3-inch bubble around everything of like, you can't gum here unless you're charging me. But what makes Beast of Chaos unique in that is that they also have the speed to get from one objective to the other. So your opponent, if they are in the middle, they have to make a tough choice of like, okay, I could charge that unit and pin them, but I want to use my guys to go hop on this objective over here. But by leaving them alone, they have the speed to come and steal it from me. And so there's all those kinds of weird things where, because your guys are so quick, like it forces some weird decision making on your opponent's part as far as like, where do I go? And every time you can make your opponent make hard decisions, it's good for you.
Yeah. It's
anyway, that's all. That's all. That's my rant about board control.
Yeah, I think you've answered it pretty well there. Definitely. And then we've got Daniel. So he says, love this series. I have a genuine question about creating meaningful lore and flavour for this kind of army. Doug, you always talk about how heroes become important in Horde armies to help create a narrative. How does that work when your hero is a goat who's just walking around peeing on things? The battle line beastmen are much the same. How do you make this a story worth telling / listening to? That's a bit of an interesting one.
Well, there are a few ways to go about this. One is to have a really cool defining origin. So there's one story in the Battle Tome of like a city that gets like, it's under siege, so all the doors are locked and everyone's trapped inside, and then like a Tzeentch spell turns them all into Zangor or Beasts of Chaos, or they devolve somehow into becoming Beasts of Chaos. So that could be one where it's like, maybe he was the captain of the guard and they all just went bat insane, and now all of a sudden, he still has that kind of respect and authority of might. So that could be a cool story. Another one is just the fact that, even though they are very primitive, and when they're they are all like just completely no brain whatsoever, they actually do have a very crude sense of structure. It's a power structure just like anything else in Chaos, where might makes right, biggest guy's on top. And he, like when you start exploring the different god-based ones, even if you don't want to lean into one of those battalions, just by reading their lore, you can understand like, oh, well, sometimes they really are attracted to shiny jewels, and sometimes they really are slaughter focused, or you know what I mean. And so there's even if you don't take the battalion, they can still have some personality based on things they like, what they hate, what's in their area, what realm they're in, to define kind of their attributes, because the longer you're in a realm, you kind of take on some of its personality. So yeah, there's still quite a bit of ways to go.
I think it's not like the hordes of the Beasts of Chaos. It's not like they're all linked to some sort of hive mind and they don't have their own personality. Even like the little Ungor wants to be on top one day. He's not getting there, but they still have that, and they are the oldest race in Age Sigmar. Which is
they have stuff like shamans. You can have like a religious type culture centered around them. Any I don't want to like demean anything, but when you look at like extremely like primitive, untouched tribes that exist in the world today, they have order. You know what I mean? Like, even though it's all wild, they don't have complex society, but it exists. That's kind of how they are.
It's I suppose a little bit off a little bit, but like something that came to my mind is, I don't know if you're aware of the game called Vermintide.
Oh yeah, I love Vermintide.
Yeah. So when the I think Winds of Magic DLC for it came out, it was introducing the Beastmen in it, or Beasts of Chaos they're called now, and the trailer for that was of a child that was born to like a noble family, but it was born a bit bestial and mutated because of the Winds of Magic swept through that part that day. And then I think the they're going along in a caravan, and of the noble family, the caravan gets ambushed, and then the sort of baby who looks a bit bestial gets taken by the beastman, and then he gets raised, and he makes his might makes right, so he becomes the leader of that beast. So like, they can come from, you know, from good narrative beginnings. It's not like, I don't know, probably going to get this wrong here, but Lord of the Rings Uruk-hai will just seem to have came from a muddy pit or something. You know, they can come from interesting background stuff. So there's loads you can do with it, and I'd probably say just look online, and also read the battle tome a bit more and stuff to try and get some inspiration behind it. Probably the best thing. So with that, so thank you for that question. And then we have Andrew here. So he says, I think at the moment Beasts of Chaos are seen as one of the weaker factions in AOS. So what improvements / changes could be made to their next battle tome to help them make them a more viable army? I'd love to see more supportive heroes / models to help with things like their hit rolls. I want to say that their hitting is their wound in their army is not too bad, but their hitting is generally 4s or above. So I agree with that, especially like Bulgors when I reviewed that. And when it comes to something that I'd like to see, and we've already touched upon this, but it's just a what's the bloody word now? Better in-game balance, in-book balance.
Yeah, I think the book needs some internal balance, because there are just so many units that have overlapping roles in terms of being chaff, or this is my big heavy hitter unit, or something like that. I would like there to be some other drawback to taking Tzeentch units, and I don't know what that would look like. But maybe, when I say drawback, I just mean like one extra step. Like you have to commit to that as an army type, rather than the Chosen are just the best in melee. Yeah. And I don't know if that's like a, general is blank or what. One other one that when I was playing the army, I felt very strongly about was, I think that Ungor should be, their unit size, the minimum should be 20. Kind of like how Marauders are 20, I think it's Marauders. What am I thinking of? Maybe it's Clan Rats. But so, where it's a Horde unit that is a minimum of 20, because right now they compete with Gore, which are the next step up. And they're neck and neck. They do the exact same thing, but Ungor do it cheaper and better, because they're on 25 mils. They can take less space. So if you had that, well, now all of a sudden there's a decision to make. Do I want to go a lot of minimum sized units? I'd want a bunch of Gore, because they're 10-man. If you want a big Horde unit, it would be the 20 person. So there's that kind of thing.
I feel like this book was, so when Age of Sigmar first came about, rightly or wrongly, every army was a mirror, and Games Workshop smashed every mirror, and these battle tomes have been putting the pieces back together. So I'd say what this battle tome did is linked the Beastmen and now Beasts of Chaos back together again. So you didn't have like sub-allegiance. Well, you didn't have like allegiances of like 1 or 2 units. It brought it all back together. So I think it's a good starting point for improvements to come in the future. I think that's for sure. For a lot of the other army. I think Legions and Nagash is another one that will probably be quite similar to that.
I agree. I would love to see it some way to get more of the summoning points than they have. Just because I do think that you would then see some of the cooler monsters and that kind of thing because the way that the summoning points are now, it is just more easy and affordable to bring on just more Gore, Ungor, that kind of stuff. Whereas some of the cooler monsters, it's really actively difficult to try and get that many summoning points for them. So if we kind of tinkered with that to make the monsters that you normally wouldn't put in your army list, you wouldn't pay points for them, but if you could summon it, that'd be super cool for free. Like I would take a whole bunch of like cockatrices and
I think
whatever Jabberslythe weird stuff.
And like a big favorite of mine is like Chimeras. I think it's one of those where if you're really into this army, chances are you're going to have those models because you like those models. But you may not always put them into your list. But you like the idea of bring them along to the game because you plan to maybe summon them. So I don't know how they could do it, but maybe if the current way of, if you sacrifice a battle line unit, you get,
Yep.
D3 mortal wounds you do to them is how many D3 summoning points you get. But if you were to do it to a behemoth unit or a hero unit, maybe the value is doubled. I don't know if that would work, but like, or you roll a D6 instead of a. There could be different ways of doing it, but it
For sure
would be interesting. I do think they probably will rework a lot of stuff. I think at some point in the future there'll be a AOS 3rd edition, if you like, coming out, and then that's probably when we'll see development on these battle tomes, because they've pretty much completed the battle tomes now, I think, apart from the new armies.
Yes, yeah. Every model in their range has a battle tome associated with it, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's important. I also want to bring up a point that I mentioned earlier is when we look at rankings and see that Beasts of Chaos loses everything, it doesn't mean that the units in the book are bad. They could just be taken as Khorne, Maggotkin, Slanesh, whatever, So just kind of keep that in the back of your head when you're looking at the stats and that kind of stuff, because they have a lot of game. It's just not always with the Allegiance Beasts of Chaos.
Yeah, it's like the old thing with I don't think Nighthawk was winning many games. However, Legion of Nagash were, but that's purely because of Grim Reapers. Like, I think that's the biggest
but
example.
But it's all Nighthawk units, and you're like, oh, these guys are super good.
Yeah, this is really good. And then they're made so expensive, so they can't be taken in a Nighthawk, are we? But so I think we've answered that question well. Mr. Psyker, so he says, love you guys. How does playing games help you survive in our post-apocalyptic world? I would say that playing games scientifically boosts your immune system. I think we can leave that. I think that's science. We'll move on.
Exactly.
So Nathan then says, what can be done to make a Sigor relevant? I think we've covered that.
You did a great job. I hadn't even thought about that, but that's a super good point.
Use them in Darkwalkers, teleport them behind your enemy, annoy your enemy's wizards. If you've taken him in your list and your enemy doesn't have any wizards, try and enjoy your game. Try and make him do something. He's there. You go. That's a rightly or wrongly. I don't know if it's worth the 140 points, but do that with him.
Yep. Well, what I would say in that case is honestly just suss out whatever, because if they're not taking a wizard, that means there's something else on the table that is giving synergies, right? Figure out what it is, have them charge into that so it freaks your opponent out. Do the mind games rather than actual effectiveness.
Again, it's a big model. It's one of those things, isn't it?
He's holding the big old rock, he looks super nasty.
Yeah, and if the enemy leave him and you're trying to just pick off their key synergy pieces and the enemy doesn't want to bother with him, he's got only one attack and it hits on a 4 and stuff, but D6 damage might not go through the first time, but in 5 turns it probably will hit one time and do 6 damage. It will put the payload through.
And if you get first turn and he can charge into something, he hits like a couple of Bestigor, right? He has the same 4 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 rend. Like in melee, he can do stuff too. So it's just.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not going to be amazing, but he's there. He's scary.
He's not Dragon Ogres. Okay, and then Vito then says, give me your best Bulgor list. So I gave a Bulgor list in the list video I just put up. Unless you have one off the top of your head, but I imagine not.
I do not. Because they got a few points adjustments. I haven't seen anything, or I haven't come up with anything since that. So I apologize.
Yeah, that's fine. Refer to my Bulgor list in the last video, or in doubt, just I don't know, up my Bulgor list to, don't know if this is legal, 3 units of 12 Bulgors and a Doom Ball.
God.
I mean, you'll have fun.
Oh, yeah.
And then Kevin says, what new models would you love to see for Beasts of Chaos? Mm-hmm. That's always a nice question. I think a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, I think, would be cool. I've seen so many people do the Bloodthirster and Star Drake conversion.
Yep. Yep. For me, if I could have anything, I'm happy with the way the book is. I just want the same level of dedicated beastmen for all the other gods that Tzeentch
Yeah.
has. Like I want, they were called Pestigore, so it's the Nurgle versions of Gore. You have the Corn Gore. You have what are the is it Slongore? Is that what they are? Like the Slanesh
kinky
version.
ones.
All these things they're from back in the day when you could do that in fantasy battles. I just want, they don't have to have like
They don't need the
full
Skyfire
army
or
ranges.
Enlightened units, do they? It's just like
Yeah.
one box, 3 boxes, 1 box for each god. That hasn't.
Yeah.
And I know you can, like, I've seen people with plague bearers. They replace the plague bearer head with a gore head, but it's nice to see actual boxes as well, isn't it? I think a lot of the models stand up. I think it's mainly the resin ones that are
it's true.
Probably look a bit older. Maybe a more menacing Doom Ball or something would be cool.
Yeah, it's the if we're just going to talk about replacing stuff that already exists, it's definitely any of the, because if they make a really nice new model for the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, they're not going to give him crap rules. Or like for the Dragon Ogres, I'm sorry, the Shaggoth is actually pretty cool. But the Dragon Ogres, they definitely need the new kit, as well as some of the more random monsters, because they kind of use this as like a, oh god, we have 5,000 cockatrices in stock because no one's bought them since they're since the Reagan era of U.S. government. So we're gonna make them dirt cheap. And
that's the thing. If they have so much in stock, then there's no way they're going to bring out a new model for it. Because it's just like, as soon as we bring a new model, it's not that no one's going to buy the old one. We also then take the old one off the website. Oh, it's just
melt them down, turn them into bases or something. I don't know what they're going to do with them, but
that'll be a lot of resin bases. But yeah, I think a new like Chimera model would be great. I mean, I love Greek mythology, so I think I'm a big fan of that. But something that doesn't look, it's a bit like the Manticore as well, where I thought it was the same kit at first, because it's like the kitty cat thing where its paws are like that and it's not really dynamic. I actually have a I'll quickly try and get this off the wall.
you're good.
I actually have Army on Parades thing I won a while ago, but it's a picture of a Retributor fighting a Khorne Chaos Warrior, and you probably can't see, to be fair, but in the sky there is loads of chimeras, and to reflect the model, they all have exactly the same pose, where their wings are not perfectly out straight and they're all sort of leaned up like this, so it doesn't really, I feel sorry, and their feet are weirdly sort of like, or as if they're standard, which is, it's just weird. But yeah, this we always like new models. I think it'd be really cool if they made new Seraphim models, but I always say this when someone says what new models would I like. I think we've answered that. And then I think it's like the last question. Dan is saying brass to spoilers worth a go, so the Khorne battalion, and yeah, it is quite simply.
I think that's, like I said before, I think if you're looking for god specific, I think that's a really good choice. The Nurgle one is also fantastic if the rest of your Nurgle army is very slow.
Yep.
Because like I tried it, but my Nurgle army is based upon speed, and so they just didn't offer anything new or unique. But if it does, because the thing about the Khorne one, because you get bonuses if you have a lot of units that are all within a distance of each other. Yeah. Because they're also cheap, you can maximize that. And so
what I liked about it is, so if you're wholly within, like I say, 9 inches of another guy from that, another unit from that unit, from the battalion, you then get to reroll hit rolls of 1, which, because your hitting's not great in this army, it does help with that, especially if you've got, like I've mentioned several times, the bull cores with great axes is a good example of low attack weapon, high damage, hitting on 4s though, just to try and help you not waste any of those attacks. And then there's like with that battalion, there's like Blood Rage, so like as well as getting that reroll once to hit, once per game, you can get reroll all failed wound rolls as well. So it's the hardest thing with that is with movement, but once you've been playing this army for a while, you'll really get on top of your movement game and your model placement. So you'll just benefit from this. I think that's all the questions. I think that's pretty much it. Is there anything else you want to say, or in a summary for why someone should play Beasts of Chaos if they're still listening to this video? I presume if they're still listening, they want to play the army, but just in case.
You're already in.
Yeah.
No, it's a fantastic army. Like the stats for competitiveness are there are because it can operate in so many different armies. They are, I don't think, very comprehensive, or they don't reflect the army as a whole. In addition to that, like you learn things that even if you're like, this isn't my jam, you can take to other places. Like learning model placement and board control are useful in literally every army. Like there's no game in which that's not important.
Yeah.
So learning to master those things is awesome. Yeah, they're really cool. Go check out the rest of your this channel's tactics series for more detail, because they have this incredibly deep toolbox that maybe you're not going to win, the UK Masters with, but you can have a fantastic time at your game night. Incredibly amounts of fun. So
it was like I say, the end of my Beast of Chaos series, and like probably after about 10 hours, and it generally has been an enjoyable army to look into,
sure.
and also an army I didn't know too much about. It's and I haven't really fought too much as well, so it's not like where you can go, I've got a 70% idea of how this army works and stuff. It's been generally interesting. There's so much unit choice in this in this book as well, and because they break things down in so many races, it was an absolute joy to be able to nicely title every video, because it fits really well. So it was good. But so thank you very much for saying to check out the series. But if you guys would like to know more lore and everything about the Beast of Chaos, we only just touched on this one. Like I say, there will be a link to Doug's on 2+ Tough's lore channel, and I'm just going to say it, probably the most lore out there for Beast of Chaos on YouTube at a push at this current moment in time.
Probably
not many people have talked about them.
Yeah, there's more lore channels popping up now, but a few of them have gone backwards to talk about Beast of Chaos specifically. Yeah,
I think at this moment, cool anyway. But it's very cool, and you talk about how actually that's a good shout for before I forget your name. I think it was Daniel. Yeah, Daniel. So like you're wanting to find out more sort of like character behind your Beast of Chaos. Dug in these videos, I have watched them, and he does talk about how each model or how every single sub race of the Beast of Chaos do sort of live in that society. So you may find some inspiration there as well, which is cool. But anyway, guys, so I think that's it. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you did enjoy this, please head over to 2+ Tough and check out Doug's content as well.
Thank you.
He does, like I say, really nice lore videos, and explains, especially if you're a bit new to Warhammer and it all seems a bit there's so much, how do I learn it, he breaks it down into a very easy digestible format. So definitely go check that out. And like I say, if you like this video, please smash the like button and the subscribe button, as that massively helps the channel. It's absolutely free for you guys to do so. If you'd like to support on Patreon, there is a link at the top of the description down below. And a massive shout out to my patrons, as if it wasn't for them, I would not be able to do this channel. So they know who they are, and they do a great job. Okay, so anything else you want to say, Doug?
Nope, I'm good to go. You nailed it.
Okay, guys. So until next time, remember to stay safe, of course. Stay hygienic best you can. Always wear a mask. And, of course, until next time, remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.